The scent of blood hung in the air, not real blood, but the metallic taste of fear that coated her tongue as the phone slipped from her trembling fingers. Her sister's words still echoed like shattered glass in her skull. 30 days. 30 days, or her baby boy would become a number in the system, another forgotten child swallowed by bureaucracy and broken promises. Nadia Kemper pressed her back against the cold wall of her tiny quarters, trying to muffle the sobs that tore through her chest like bullets. She thought she'd mastered the art of silent crying. 8 months of living in this mansion had taught her how to be a ghost, how to exist without existing, how to serve without being seen. She had no idea that Kim Tae-jun had been cataloguing every breath she took since the day she arrived, and she had absolutely no clue what the most feared man in Seoul was about to unleash. Before we dive deeper into this storm, if you're new to this corner of the internet, smash that subscribe button and become part of the Ebony and Pearl Stories universe. Believe me when I say you'll regret missing what's coming next. Kim Tae-jun didn't understand mercy. He'd constructed his kingdom on calculated brutality and tactical silence. Feelings were landmines. Connections were ammunition, your rivals stockpiled against you. So why was his crystal tumbler already hitting the mahogany desk with a decisive thud? He'd been observing details about her. Details that should have slid past his consciousness like water. The way she breathed life into ancient spirituals while organizing his daughter's wardrobes, melodies that sounded like ancestral wisdom crystallized in music. Her fingers weaving through Soo-jin and Mi-rae's hair in complex patterns that resembled sacred rituals. How she recoiled when his armed guards moved within striking distance, then masked it with a brightness that never touched the windows of her soul. The purple-green constellation on her forearm 2 months back, concealed beneath fabric, never addressed. She possessed a beauty that disturbed his equilibrium. Not the manufactured surgical perfection of the women orbiting his universe, but something authentic and vulnerable. Unprocessed. Natural coils crowning her face in magnificent spirals. Melanin-rich skin that seemed to capture and radiate the ambient light when she believed herself unobserved. Eyes that carried entire lifetimes she'd never articulate. Eyes that were currently bloodshot with anguish he could detect through fortified walls designed to repel everything. Tae-jun's hand drifted toward the beretta nested in his drawer, then froze. This wasn't that species of danger. This was infinitely worse. He navigated through the estate like a phantom. Decades of criminal expertise rendered him virtually soundless, past the twins' sanctuary where LED constellations glowed gentle amber, down the service stairwell, through the passageway where her modest quarters existed at the terminal point, deliberately separated from the primary residence. When he arrived at her threshold, the weeping had ceased, replaced by jagged, desperate breathing that spoke of someone drowning on dry land. "Turn back. She's hired help. This situation doesn't concern you." He knocked. The void that followed was so absolute the entire mansion seemed to suspend its heartbeat. "Ms. Kemper." His voice emerged more gravelly than calculated. "Everything's under control, Mr. Kim." Saturated, thick, unmistakably shattered. "Please accept my apologies for the disruption. It's handled." "Unlock the door." An eternity compressed into seconds. The mechanism clicked. When she materialized, his jaw muscles contracted involuntarily. Swollen eyes, tear-carved face, charcoal cardigan clutched around her frame like battle armor. But it was the cellular device imprisoned in her quaking hand that triggered his tactical instincts. "Who contacted you?" She shook her head, retreating into the doorframe like a wounded animal. "It's private. It's nothing that requires your—" "Nadia." Her name spoken in his voice stopped time itself. He'd never used her given name. 8 months of Ms. Kemper, a designation, a fortification, a professional moat. Now that barrier disintegrated with a single syllable. "Who contacted you?" The levee broke. "My sister." The words emerged strangled, excavated from somewhere primal. "Desiree. She's been caring for my son. I haven't held him in 2 years. 2 entire years, Mr. Kim. I wire money religiously every month. I video call every week when the connection cooperates. But tonight, her voice splintered into shrapnel. Tonight she informed me that if I don't retrieve him within 30 days, she's surrendering him to the foster system. She claims she can no longer manage him. He's rebelling, he's furious, and he keeps demanding. The sob escaped like a prisoner. He keeps demanding to understand why his mother abandoned him. Taejun's reality tilted off its axis. She had a son. What's his age? 8. She dragged shaking palms across her face, but the tears multiplied like wounds. His name is Micah. I relocated to Korea because the compensation was 12 times what America offered. I convinced myself I could accumulate enough to bring him here, construct a legitimate future for us. But the visa labyrinth, the astronomical legal fees, the attorneys who continuously extract my savings while delivering absolutely nothing. Her voice collapsed entirely. It's consuming too much time, and now I'm going to be severed from him permanently. Why did you conceal this from me? Her laugh contained broken glass. Inform you. She studied him, as if he'd spoken an extinct language. Mr. Kim, you barely register my existence. I'm domestic staff. I nurture your daughters. I maintain invisibility. I remain unnoticed. Her eyes connected with his, crimson-rimmed and exposed. That's the arrangement. Something in her statement penetrated him like a serrated blade. She believed herself invisible. You genuinely think I don't observe you? His voice descended to something dangerous, intimate. I'm aware you purchase fresh botanicals from the Thursday market and position them in the girls' quarters because their mother maintained the identical tradition. I'm aware you're instructing them in Korean folklore ballads, songs my wife performed before her death, songs I never requested you to master. Nadia's eyes expanded. I'm aware you remain conscious past midnight, consuming child psychology literature so you can navigate Soojin's emotional explosions better. I'm aware you transmit 85% of your wages internationally. I'm aware you consume a single meal daily to preserve resources because you assume nobody notices when you bypass lunch. He advanced closer. I'm aware your immigration attorney is financially exploiting you, and I'm aware someone inflicted damage on you before your arrival here because you flinch at elevated voices and secure your door 4 times nightly. How? Because I invest attention in the individuals occupying my household. His eyes imprisoned hers. Particularly those safeguarding what I treasure most fundamentally. Silence expanded between them like something living, heavy, electric, trembling with potential. 30 days, he stated quietly. That's your timeline? She nodded, defeated, hollowed out. Then we possess adequate time. Time for what? The words emerged, desperate, disbelieving. Ms. Kempe, I can't financially afford to fly home and sacrifice this position. The visa transfer could consume 8 months, and that's assuming everything aligns perfectly, which it never. Do you trust me? The question suspended in the atmosphere like gunpowder. I'm uncertain, she whispered. Something transformed in his expression. Not anger, respect. Intelligent woman. A dark smile curved his mouth like a blade. But I'm going to resolve this regardless. This woman crossed an entire ocean, operates 19-hour days, starves herself to conserve money, and transmits everything home to architect her son's future. And the system still attempts to tear them apart. If you believe mothers like Nadia deserve reunification with their children, demolish that subscribe button and drop a comment saying, "Bring Micah home." Only individuals who align with corrupt systems and predatory lawyers will scroll past. Comment what time you're experiencing this story. I need to witness how far this truth travels, because what Tae-jun orchestrates next, it's going to obliterate everything. The envelope materialized when Nadia surfaced from nightmares. Ivory-colored, luxurious, inserted beneath her door sometime during the pre-dawn darkness. Her hands trembled violently as she unsealed it, still swollen-eyed from a night of fractured sleep and anxiety spirals. Inside, a first-class ticket to Atlanta, 3 weeks authorized paid absence, signed and authenticated by his estate administrator, and a professional card for an immigration specialist in Seoul, one of the most formidable in the nation. On the reverse side, precise handwriting in obsidian ink. Already compensated, already informed, bring Micah home. Nadia dropped the card 4 times before achieving stability. She located him in his private office 2 hours later. He was engaged in a phone conversation, articulating rapid Korean, something regarding shipments, logistics, the abbreviated vocabulary of someone who mobilized millions with individual sentences. When he detected her in the entrance, he elevated one finger. Wait. She waited, cardiac muscle pounding against her ribcage, envelope clutched against her sternum like a talisman. He terminated the call and positioned the device down deliberately. His eyes discovered hers immediately. Dark, impenetrable, patient. I cannot accept this, she announced, advancing forward. She positioned the envelope on his desk as if it might combust. It's excessive. The ticket alone must have required. You can, and you will. Mr. Kim Tae-jun. The word stopped her cold. What? My name? He reclined in his executive chair, observing her with an intensity that made her skin temperature elevate. Utilize it. The intimacy of that request stole her oxygen. 8 months of Mr. Kim. 8 months of meticulous distance, professional boundaries, the security of formality. Now he was requesting she traverse a line she wasn't certain she could untraverse. Why are you executing this? She whispered. He rose, navigated around the desk with that predatory fluidity she'd registered from inception, the way he occupied space like he'd conquered it, because he had. When he halted before her, proximate enough that she could detect his fragrance, cedar and smoke and something prohibitively expensive, his eyes were devastating. Because my daughters are devoted to you. He paused, letting that land. Because you vocalize them towards sleep when they experience nightmares about their mother. Because you master songs in a language you don't comprehend just to provide them comfort. Because you're the first person in this household who isn't terrified of me. Her throat constricted. And because no child should invest another moment believing his mother deserted him. The tears arrived before she could construct defenses. Silent, screaming, liberating. I don't comprehend how to express gratitude, she managed. Transport him home safely, Tae-jun said quietly. That's sufficient. She nodded once, twice, then rotated before she could articulate something reckless. Before she could confess that in 8 months of functioning in his residence, this was the inaugural moment she'd felt like someone actually perceived her. At the threshold, she stopped. Tae-jun. His name felt foreign on her tongue. Dangerous. Right. She didn't rotate around. Thank you. 16 days later. Incheon International Airport. 7:23 p.m. Nadia navigated through the arrivals gate with her cardiac muscle lodged in her throat and her son's hand imprisoned tight in hers, afraid if she released it, he'd evaporate like smoke. Micah was diminutive for 8. Guarded. His eyes possessed the identical fortified strength as his mother's, but beneath it, rage. The species that originated from abandonment, from 2 years of demanding why and never receiving an explanation that constructed meaning. He'd barely communicated during the flight, 16 hours of silence, his face compressed against the aircraft window, observing clouds transit like he was searching for something he'd lost and might never recover. Now he walked adjacent to her through the terminal, a solitary backpack on his narrow shoulders containing everything he possessed in the world. I'm going to repair this, she thought desperately. I'm going to provide you with everything I never had. Then she detected him. Kim Tae-jun stood near the exit, hands nested in his pockets, observing the arrivals display. No security detail, no entourage, just him. Expensive tailored suit, sharp jawline, tattoos emerging above his collar like dark poetry. He'd arrived personally. Nadia's security briefings had crystallized one reality. Tae-jun never retrieved anyone from airports. Ever. He dispatched drivers, assistants, armed personnel. But he never materialized personally. Until now. Micah contracted behind her the instant he registered him. The tattooed Korean man in the midnight suit, the stillness that radiated danger even in complete immobility. Everything about Tae-jun screamed authority, the species that made full-grown men step aside and avert their eyes. But Tae-jun didn't approach Nadia first. He descended right there in the epicenter of the terminal. This man who commanded half of Seoul's underworld lowered himself to an 8-year-old's visual level, making himself vulnerable in a space filled with strangers. "Your mother discusses you constantly," he stated. Perfect English, gentle but unfiltered. "She's exceptionally proud of you." Micah's jaw tightened, his small fists clenching. "She left me." The words were small, accusing, a wound dressed up as a fact. Tae-jun didn't flinch or offer empty comfort. "She did," he agreed, unflinching honesty. "Because she loves you sufficiently to sacrifice proximity so you could possess a superior future. That's the most agonizing species of love that exists." Micah's lip quivered. His fists clenched tighter, fighting tears, fighting vulnerability. "But she's returned now." Tae-jun continued, voice steady as stone. "And so are you. And in my household," he extended his hand palm upward, an offering. "We protect our family. Always." A pause, pregnant with possibility. "Agreed?" Micah stared at the outstretched hand. This stranger, this powerful, terrifying man kneeling on an airport floor, offering him something nobody else ever had, unwavering protection. Slowly, carefully, Micah reached out, his small fingers enveloped around Tae-jun's. "Agreed." An 8-year-old boy, abandoned, furious, frightened, and a former Mafia boss who just made him an unbreakable promise. 4 weeks transformed everything. Micah's laughter reverberated through the estate now, a sound Nadia had almost forgotten existed in her universe. He pursued Sujin and Mirei through the cultivated garden, instructing them in American basketball techniques while they instructed him in Korean expressions that made him giggle at his own terrible pronunciation. "Oppa! Saranghae! Babo!" The twins worshipped him, designated him their brother, competed over who secured the adjacent seat during meals. And Micah, angry, guarded, wounded Micah, was gradually metamorphosing into a boy again, laughing without permission, trusting without conditions. His visa was temporary, 90 days while the documentation processed, while attorneys filed motions and immigration officials reviewed documents with bureaucratic slowness. 90 days of borrowed time, of holding her breath. But observing him now, solar rays on his face, joy illuminating his voice, Nadia permitted herself to believe it might actually succeed. She should have understood better. The security chief materialized at 9:47 p.m. Lieutenant Kang was a former military operative, scarred, silent, loyal to Tae-jun since their compulsory service days. He never visited the residence unless something catastrophic was unfolding. Nadia was in the kitchen preparing evening tea when she registered the study door seals shut. Registered the low murmur of voices penetrating the wall like distant thunder. She advanced closer, pretended to organize the tea collection, listened. Encrypted transmission intercepted 90 minutes ago. Kang's voice was flat, professional, devoid of emotion. The Kurodumi clan. They've identified everyone in your household. A pause that stretched like eternity, including the woman and the boy. Nadia's blood transformed to ice water. "Read it," Tae-jun's voice, hard as reinforced iron, paper rustling. Then Kang reciting words that made her world tilt violently off its axis. The nanny and her son evacuate Korea in 48 hours, or they disappear permanently. Silence. Nadia's hands imprisoned the counter edge. Her vision blurred at the peripherals. Everything she'd constructed, everything she'd sacrificed. Threatened by men who didn't even comprehend her name, who saw her son as collateral damage. 48 hours. She was supposed to run, pack her minimal belongings, seize Micah, dissolve into another country, another life, another 2 years of concealment and fear. She was so exhausted of running, the study door unsealed before she realized she was moving, operating on instinct and fury. Tae-jun and Kang looked up simultaneously. The security chief's hand drifted toward his weapon on pure instinct, then dropped when he identified her. But it was Tae-jun's face that stopped her, the careful blankness, the control masking something volcanic beneath the surface. "You overheard," he stated. "Not a question." "Yes." "Then you comprehend. I'll arrange transportation tonight. New identities. Safe location in..." "No." The words sliced through the atmosphere like a blade through silk. Kang's eyebrows elevated. Tae-jun went very still, dangerously still. "No?" His voice was quiet. Lethal. "I'm not running." Nadia stepped into the study, sealing the door behind her with finality. "Neither is Micah." "Nadia, I invested 2 years running from my ex in Atlanta." The words emerged steady, but her hands were trembling violently. 2 years of revolving addresses, disposable phones, jumping at shadows like a hunted animal. I relocated across the entire world to escape him. I left my son behind to keep him protected from a man who would have weaponized him to destroy me. She met Tae-jun's eyes with unflinching intensity. "I'm finished running." "This isn't your ex-boyfriend," Tae-jun's voice went cold, clinical, factual. "This is the Yakuza. Japanese organized crime with reach across 4 continents and resources that dwarf anything you've encountered. They will torture you for information you don't possess, and they will eliminate Micah just to transmit me a message. Then stop them." The simplicity of her demand hit him like a physical blow, like she'd struck him across the face. "You don't comprehend what you're requesting." "I comprehend perfectly." She advanced closer, fearless in a way that made his pulse spike dangerously. "You're Kim Tae-jun. Half of Seoul's underworld is terrified of your name alone. You've constructed an empire on making problems dissolve. You've made men disappear for lesser offences." Her eyes imprisoned his, dark, fierce, unbreaking, matching his intensity. "So, make this problem disappear." Kang shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't how people addressed his boss. This wasn't how people addressed his boss. This wasn't how anyone addressed Kim Tae-jun and survived. But Tae-jun didn't look away from her. Couldn't look away. "If I do this," he said slowly, deliberately, "if I escalate this conflict to open warfare, people will die. Many people." Nadia didn't flinch, didn't blink. Then let them be the correct people. The darkness in her voice matched his own perfectly, resonated with it like a tuning fork. This woman, this mother who hummed gospel songs and braided hair like prayers, had steel running through her spine, had survived things that would have shattered others, had crossed oceans and endured years of loneliness and separation, and still stood here refusing to bend, refusing to break. She wasn't asking him to protect her, she was asking him to unleash the monster. Tae-jun observed her for a long moment, something shifting behind his eyes. Then he looked at Kang. "Summon the lieutenants," he said quietly. "All of them. Immediate assembly." Kang nodded once and exited the room like a ghost. When they were alone, Tae-jun rotated back to Nadia. His expression was unreadable, but something burned behind his eyes like distant fire. "You should comprehend what you've just asked me to execute." "I know exactly what I've asked." She held his gaze without wavering. "I'm not afraid of your violence, Tae-jun. I'm afraid of losing my son again." "My son," she'd said. Not just my son, but claiming ownership, claiming family, claiming him as part of this impossible equation they'd created. The words suspended between them like something fragile and indestructible simultaneously. "Then stay proximate," he said, voice low and dangerous. And pray I finish this before they realize what's coming. The Yakuza threatened a mother and her child, gave them 48 hours to run or die. They selected the wrong household. If you don't stand with cowards who threaten children, obliterate that subscribe button and comment, "Wrong house." Only people who side with bullies and criminals scroll past this. Drop the time you're watching right now. Let's show them how far a mother's strength can reach, because what transpires in the next 72 hours, Seoul's underworld will never be identical again. What transpired in the next 72 hours would become legend whispered in Seoul's underworld for generations. Kim Tae-jun didn't respond to the threat with negotiation. He erased it with systematic precision. 4 of the Kurodumi clan's lieutenants vanished in a single night. No bodies discovered, no traces left behind, just abandoned apartments and cold meals left on tables, chopsticks still positioned on bowls, as if their owners had stepped out for a moment and never returned to this world. 3 safe houses combusted to the ground before dawn. The fires were precise, surgical, destroying everything inside while leaving neighbouring structures completely untouched like a message written in flame. Firefighters discovered nothing but ash and melted steel, evidence obliterated, bank accounts frozen solid, supply lines severed cleanly. Informants went silent or switched allegiances overnight. The Kurodumi's entire network collapsed like a house of cards in a hurricane. And the man who had ordered the threat against Nadia and Micah, a mid-level boss named Tanaka, who thought targeting a nanny would be easy leverage, who underestimated the wrong man, found himself kneeling on the concrete floor of an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Incheon, hands bound behind his back, face bloody and swollen beyond recognition. Tae-jun stood over him, jacket removed, sleeves rolled to his elbows, knuckles split and raw and still bleeding. His white shirt was splattered with crimson. "You threatened a woman in my house," Tae-jun said quietly, voice more terrifying for its calmness. "A mother. A child." "It was business," Tanaka's voice emerged, broken, desperate, pleading. "Just business, nothing personal. I didn't know she meant anything to you." "She lives under my roof." Tae-jun crouched down, bringing his face close, making sure Tanaka saw the absence of mercy in his eyes. "That makes her mine to protect. That makes her son mine to keep safe. You should have understood better." "Please." Tanaka's eyes were wild, searching for compassion he wouldn't find. "Please, I have a family." "So does she." The warehouse went silent when Tae-jun's men dragged Tanaka away. His screams reverberated off the walls long after he disappeared into the darkness, long after his voice gave out entirely. The message was sent. The message was received. 4:47 a.m. The house was dark when Tae-jun returned. He navigated through the back entrance, avoiding the main halls where the children slept peacefully, unaware of the violence committed in their name. His suit jacket was gone, lost somewhere between the warehouse and the car. His white shirt was rumpled, stained at the cuffs and collar. His knuckles were split open, dried blood cracking with every movement of his fingers. Exhaustion clung to him like smoke. Violence radiated from his skin like heat. He needed whiskey, a scalding shower, 14 hours of sleep he wouldn't get. What he discovered was Nadia. She was sitting in the dark living room, curled into the corner of the leather couch, waiting. A single lamp illuminated her face. The moment he appeared in the doorway, she stood with fluid grace. "Is it finished?" Her voice was quiet, steady, controlled. "It's finished." He moved to the bar cart, poured whiskey with hands that wouldn't stop trembling slightly. "They won't touch you again. No one will. I've made certain." She crossed the room toward him, closing the distance. "You're hurt." "I'm fine." "Tae-jun." Her voice gentled, and something in his chest cracked at the sound of his name on her lips. The intimacy of it. "Let me see." She reached for his damaged hands. He caught her wrists, not hard, but firm enough to stop her. His grip was careful, controlled, even as everything inside him threatened to shatter. "Don't." "Why?" His eyes met hers, and the hunger there stole her breath completely, raw, desperate, barely contained. "Because if you touch me right now," he said hoarsely, voice like gravel, "I won't be able to stop myself from—" He cut himself off, jaw clenched, fighting for control he was rapidly losing. "From what?" she whispered, heart pounding. The air between them crackled with electricity, with inevitability. "From showing you exactly how profoundly you've gotten under my skin, how you've infected every thought, how I'd burn this entire city down for you." Nadia's heart slammed against her ribs violently. She should step back, retreat to safety. Should remember that this man had just spent 3 days systematically dismantling a criminal organization. Should remember the blood on his hands, the violence in his past, the danger that followed him like a shadow he couldn't escape. But she'd spent her entire life stepping back, being careful, being invisible, being safe. She was finished being invisible. "Maybe I want you to," she said softly, clearly without hesitation. His control shattered like glass. Taejun pulled her against him forcefully, one hand sliding into her hair, the other wrapping around her waist as his mouth found hers. The kiss was desperate and claiming and inevitable, like they'd been drowning separately and finally found air in each other. She kissed him back like she'd been starving for this, for him, for this connection. Her hands fisted in his blood-stained shirt, pulling him closer, erasing every millimetre of distance between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers, neither willing to create space. "I don't do relationships," he said hoarsely, honestly. "I don't do soft. Everything I touch ends in violence and destruction." "I'm not afraid of your violence," Nadia said, her hands cupping his face, thumbs brushing his jaw tenderly. "I'm afraid of not having you at all. I'm afraid of walking away from this. Nadia, I love you." The words emerged fierce, unashamed, liberating. "I know that's insane. I know your world is dangerous. I know this makes no logical sense, but I've been drowning for years, and you're the first person who taught me how to breathe again." His grip on her tightened possessively, protectively. "I'll destroy anyone who tries to hurt you," he promised, the vow low and absolute. "You and Micah, you're mine now. Do you comprehend? Mine to protect, mine to keep, mine to love." "Yes," she breathed. He kissed her again, slower this time, reverent, worshipful. "I love you too," he whispered against her lips like a confession. "God help us both." He burned down safe houses, made men vanish into the night, brought a criminal empire to its knees, all for her, all for them. Drop the time you're watching this right now. Let's see how far this story reaches across the world. Because the storm is over. But what comes next? That's where everything changes forever. Morning light spilled through the windows, soft and golden and peaceful. Micah padded down the stairs in his pajamas, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He'd heard voices last night, low murmurs, movement, the house settling, but hadn't investigated. He was learning that in this house, some things were better left alone, some adult things he didn't need to understand yet. But when he reached the living room, he stopped completely. His mother was asleep on the couch, her head rested on Taejun's chest, her body curled against his, like she belonged there, like she'd always belonged there. His arm wrapped around her even in sleep, protective, possessive, tender in a way Micah had never seen him before. His suit jacket was draped over her like a blanket, shielding her from the morning chill. Micah stood in the doorway, observing them breathe in synchronization, observing the way Taejun's hand rested on her shoulder, observing the peace on his mother's face, something he hadn't witnessed in years, maybe ever. Slowly, carefully, he crossed the room on silent feet. He reached down and adjusted the jacket, tucking it higher around her shoulders so she wouldn't get cold, so she'd stay warm and safe. His small fingers smoothed the fabric with care. "Thank you," he whispered, voice barely audible, looking at Taejun, "for bringing her back to me, for bringing us both home." Taejun's eyes opened, dark, alert, instantly awake. The instincts of a man who'd survived by never fully sleeping, by always remaining vigilant. But when he saw Micah standing there, those battle-hardened instincts softened into something gentler. The boy's eyes were wet, glistening. His jaw was tight, like he was trying to be brave, trying to be a man. Tae-jun held his gaze for a long moment, man to boy, promise to promise. Always, he said quietly, making a vow. I'll always bring her home. I'll always protect both of you. Micah nodded once, sharp and decisive, then retreated to the kitchen, leaving them alone in the golden morning light. But something had shifted irreversibly. Something had sealed. A family wasn't just blood. Sometimes it was a choice. Sometimes it was people who chose to protect each other against the entire world. 3 years later. The house was nothing like the estate. No reinforced walls, no security stations, no soundproofed rooms designed to contain screams and secrets. This was a home in the suburbs, actual suburbs with actual neighbours who knew nothing of the past. A yard where children played freely. A garden where flowers grew wild and untamed. A street where people walked dogs and waved at each other and didn't know or care that the man at number 47 used to command half of Seoul's underworld with an iron fist. Nadia Kim stood at the kitchen window, coffee warming her hands, watching through the glass. Micah was 11 now, taller, stronger, fluent in Korean, with an accent that made his teachers smile. He was in the backyard instructing Soojin and Mirei in American basketball, demonstrating crossovers and layups, while the girls shrieked with laughter and tried to steal the ball with varying success. 3 children who'd become siblings not by blood, but by choice, by love, by commitment. Micah caught Mirei when she tripped, steadied her with gentle hands, then challenged her to try again with encouragement. Patient, protective, kind. The anger that had lived in his eyes for so long was gone completely, replaced by something settled, something whole and healed. Nadia's throat tightened with emotion. She'd crossed an ocean to give him a better life. Spent 2 years apart, sending money, making promises, praying desperately he'd forgive her. Now he was home, laughing in the sunshine. Now they all were. Arms wrapped around her from behind, suddenly. Tae-jun, fresh from his morning coffee, still warm from sleep. He pressed a kiss to the curve of her neck, and she leaned back into his chest, into the solidity of him, the certainty, the permanence. Happy, he murmured against her skin. She watched their children through the window, watched Micah spin the basketball on his finger, while Soojin and Mirei applauded enthusiastically, watched the sunlight catch their laughter and turn it golden, watched love manifest in movement and sound. Completely, she whispered. He'd chosen this. The man who'd built an empire on violence and silence had walked away from the throne. Not because he was weak, but because he'd found something stronger than power, more valuable than fear. Family. He still had enemies lurking in shadows, still had scars that wouldn't fade, still woke some nights with his hands reaching for weapons that weren't there anymore. But when he looked at Nadia, this woman who'd refused to run, who'd matched his darkness with her own fierce light, who'd loved him when she had every reason not to, he knew he'd made the right choice. She wasn't afraid of his past. She was his future. In the yard, Micah scored a basket and threw his arms up in victory, triumphant. Soojin tackled him around the waist while Mirei jumped on his back, and all 3 of them tumbled into the grass, laughing, a tangle of limbs and joy and belonging. Nadia smiled, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. The good kind, the healing kind. Some silences weren't empty voids. Some were full of everything that mattered. The sound of children laughing, the warmth of arms holding you steady, the peace of knowing you're exactly where you belong. A mother who refused to surrender, a boy who learned to trust again, who learned that home wasn't a place but people who chose you. A man who chose love over power, who discovered that the greatest strength wasn't in violence but in protecting what you cherished most. This is what family looks like when you fight for it with everything you have. If you believe every child deserves to come home, if you refuse to side with the systems and people who tear families apart for profit and bureaucracy, obliterate that subscribe button and comment, "Family is a choice." Only people with cold hearts scroll past a story like this without feeling something. Drop the time you're watching right now. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone who needs hope. Because some silences, they're full of everything that matters. They're full of second chances and redemption. They're full of love that refuses to die, that crosses oceans and survives years of separation. They're full of choices that change everything. And sometimes when you're brave enough to stop running and fight for what's yours, the monster becomes your protector. The impossibility becomes your reality. The broken pieces become a masterpiece. Nadia Kim turned in her husband's arms, rising on her toes to kiss him softly, gratefully, completely. Behind them, through the window, their children played in golden sunlight, building a future none of them could have imagined 3 years ago. A future they'd fought for. A future they'd bled for. A future they'd chosen together. And it was absolutely, perfectly, beautifully worth it.